So who's the first person you think of when you think about deductive reasoning, or the phrase, elementary, my dear Watson? By the way, that was never used actually in the book. You probably think of the super sleuth of Baker Street, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes is a multifaceted individual that solves mysteries with his sidekick, Dr. Watson. There's many parts to this book, including the setting, the characters, and some plots. There's many plots in the book, and also the themes it covers. First to the setting. This is turn of the century, 1900, late 1800, early 1900s, in London, England. Now, there are some other locations, but it's mainly in London. Poverty is a big factor in a lot of the Sherlock Holmes mysteries, and also wealth is a big thing in a lot of them. Most of the wealth in this part of England at this part of time is distributed very unequally. This is kind of the part of time where Oliver Twist was thought of. The orphans running amok in the streets that are going, that are making a living for themselves. That's kind of the time frame that we're looking at. Then we have the characters. First, of course, we have Mr. Holmes. Now, Mr. Holmes is very complex. He's a habitual cocaine user. He's tried heroin, and that was common practice at the time. He later looks down at the opium trade as something dirty after one of his mysteries leads him to a opium house, and a really, really strung out guy he meets there kind of turns him off to heroin. Go figure. He also uses deduction. That's a big defining factor of Holmes. Deduction is a reasoning technique that one uses when narrowing down possibilities of what happened. Also, he's a big guy with disguise, and some of these disguises sound a little bit cheesy, but apparently they got the job done. Next, we go on to Watson. Now, Watson's the boring sidekick. Most sidekicks are like, woo, let's go! Batman, let's go! Robin, it's kind of like they're exciting. Watson, on the other hand, is really drab, and he's pretty keen on the details, but not nearly as enough as Holmes is. Then we have the other characters. There's multiple mysteries in this book, so I'm just going to name off a few. We've got your Jabez Wilson in the Red-Headed League, and your Irene Adler in the Scandal in Bohemia. Interestingly enough, Irene Adler is one of the biggest women in the Holmes series, yet she only appears in one. Also, you've got the King of Bohemia. I'll talk to you a little later about that in the plots. So, speaking of plots, we have a lot of them. This book is comprised of roughly 10 to 13, I think, 10 to 13 it's mini mysteries. It's kind of like this Encyclopedia Brown books I used to read as a kid. So I'm not going to go through all of the plots. I'll just give you my favorite one, which is A Scandal in Bohemia. Basically, the King of Bohemia comes to Sherlock and Watson's house on Baker Street, and he comes in disguise. They don't know that it's him until Sherlock pretty much figures it out. He looks at different things such as hand size, clothing, all these different things, and so he's having this plain conversation with the King of Bohemia, and all of a sudden he's like, well, it's very interesting, your Majesty, and the guy freaks out. Well, little does he know that... got a battery warning. Little does he know that Sherlock Holmes is the best in the field. Now, he says that he has to go find a photograph of him and Irene Adler. Now, he's betrothed to marry a duchess, I believe it is, and he doesn't want this photo getting out because that was scandalous. So, anyways, he hires Sherlock Holmes to go and grab this photo from Irene Adler. Well, he has to do some digging and finally finds where Irene Adler is. She's an opera singer, mezzo-soprano, I believe, but that's kind of cool little fun fact. Irene Adler's a mezzo-soprano. So anyway, he goes to her house, and he kind of scopes out the scenario, what's going to happen. Then he has Watson yell, fire, and everybody runs out, and actually Watson even throws a smoke bomb in for special effect. So he yells fire, everybody runs out, and he tries to grab the photograph, only to find out that the cabinet he thought it was in, it's gone. And turns out that Irene Adler actually took it, because she kind of suspected the whole deal. And so she steals it, and goes and just hides away, basically. And Sherlock Holmes comes back to the King of Bohemia and says, "Hey, sorry man, I don't have your picture, but I don't think it'll matter because she really doesn't want it getting out there. You don't really want it getting out there. Best of both worlds, I think she'll stay quiet." So that's the scandal in Bohemia. Some themes in Sherlock Holmes, big ones, are the murder mystery or the steal mystery. Sherlock Holmes is basically a detective that tries to figure stuff out. Sounds like a little bit something that we've heard. Maybe CSI New York, CSI Miami, SVU, Criminal Minds, Criminal Intent, NCIS, like all the modern crime dramas are kind of cornerstoned on this Sherlock Holmes mystery. All the forensic evidence, he uses a lot of that, and deductive reasoning, again, it's a cornerstone of Sherlock Holmes, almost said James Bond there. All of those are cornerstoned on these deductive reasoning and forensics of Sherlock Holmes. So in conclusion, Sherlock Holmes is in what Churchill, I think, if Churchill could describe Sherlock Holmes, he'd say he's a riddle wrapped up in a mystery inside an enigma. That's a little Russia quote, but I think it perfectly describes Sherlock Holmes too. It's kind of hard to wrap your head around Sherlock Holmes, but in the end, even though he is strange, he gets the job done.